All right, welcome back. We are COMP397, that's web game programming in the winter 2020 semester, and it's week 11, part 2 of our broadcast, and we're talking about the keyboard manager and how to make that happen. So, what did we do last? Well, where we left off, we had bullets. We had a bullet manager that we created, that's great, but what we had to do to test it is we had to have our plane. I'm just going to close off the plane for a second, all this stuff. And I'm also, a lot of times it's best just to start off like this so it's not so confusing. It's best to also take a look at the plane right now. The plane constantly fires, not this one, the plane constantly fires bullets every 10 frames. That's what this thing does, okay? I would like to be able to do the same thing, so delay myself firing every 10 frames, okay? But I also want input from the keyboard. So, and this is funny, but the keyboard actually works slightly differently than you would think. Whenever we want to get input for the keyboard, it's actually getting input from the document. The document itself is where the keyboard gets input from, okay? The document object. So this is, because remember, this is JavaScript, right? So let's make a manager to do that. So I'm going to make a brand new manager, so new file. We're going to call the keyboard, we're going to call it keyboard.ts. So module managers. And then we're going to export a new class called keyboard. Now, I'm just going to talk about this, and then again, let's think about this for a second. So the keyboard class, keyboard, and maybe keyboard should be spelled with a lowercase. Keyboard, like that. Oh, of course, it's going to do that. Keyboard. So again, we want some private instance variables. So private. Instance members, and then some public properties, constructor, and then private methods as well as public methods. Okay, so those are the things we need like we normally have. Okay, so these are the things, and what we want to do is we want to think about how to bind everything. So for now, let's leave instance methods there, but I want to talk about the constructor function. Constructor function in this case is going to be very interesting in that what we want to do is I want to bind a couple of events. There's two events that we normally use. We use the key down event. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure that you guys don't have any questions. That's why I'm looking over here as well. And so that I don't miss your questions, because you might have questions, maybe. And again, thank you for all the wonderful comments. So we want to bind the document with two different kinds of events. One of them is the a key down event, and the other one is a key up event. All right. So we have two. So we have a key down and a key up. Okay. So we're going to make two methods, right, to help us out. The first method is on key down, and the other one is on key up. Okay, these are private methods because we don't have to access them from outside of this. So private, right? And we'll say on, or should I make these public? No, I think private is fine. So we'll say on key down, right? So here's the on key down method, and we're going to get an event which is going to be a keyboard event. That's what it's called, keyboard event. Okay, so that's the first one. Okay, it's going to return void, so it's not going to return anything. And then the other one is the new event called on key up. Again, we're going to get an event that's of type of keyboard event. Okay, that's going to return void. So two events, like on key down and on key up, that these are going to be the events we're going to use. And we need to bind these events somehow to the document object. So this is where sorry, so I'm going to move this over so I can see your input. This is where the this becomes a little funky, right? So we're going to say document dot add event listener, and we're going to bind the key down event okay, to this dot on key down. But what we got to do, this dot on key down. But what we want to do is we want to bind this. So I want to talk about this, and we want to also say that it's false from a bubbling perspective. So let's think about what this does. So when we go to the add event listener, it says I need the type, so key down. That's what it's going to be. And when I use the bind event, what the bind does is it binds the event to the document, right? So it surpasses my scope. That's what it does, right? So it takes this keyboard manager and it's going to pass the context, this context, to the on key down event, this one here, right? So this way I can receive input from here. Okay, I'm not sure if that makes any sense. Okay, so that's really what we're doing here when it comes to this kind of stuff. All right, so I want to do the same thing with the other one. So documents.add event listener and key up. Yeah, there's also key press, right? And then we want to this on key up dot bind this, and then finish by do we want to have any other options? The answer is no, so we're going to just save that as false. So those are the two key things we want. We want to bind these two events, key down and key up. Okay, so now the next part is how does this work? So we want to be able to get all these different kinds of keys, right? And I want to do a switch case. That's what I want. I want to look at the event.keycode for each of the buttons that I want. And for example, if I want a couple of things here, let's say, suppose I want my space bar. I'm going to make a keyboard manager for everything, right? So if you want to move your playing around with your keys, you can do that. I want to get input from my keyboard, and I want to do that by pressing different keys. So it's going to be the WASD keys, maybe the arrow keys, as well as the spacebar key. You know, these are all things that I want, right? I need key codes for all these things, right? So again, we're going to do a switch case. So switch, and we're going to do it on event.keycode. Keycode. And depending on the key, so case, and you can see that the event is going to be, you know, whatever the key code is going to be, right? It's not like it gives me an array of key codes like before. It's not like you're going to get an array of key codes that'll tell you what it is. And so we have to look these up. Case whatever the key code is, then do something kind of thing, right? But the best way to make this happen, sorry, just want to make sure one thing before we continue. But the best way to make this happen is to talk about how we map out those keys. Because you know what, I could type in those key codes and they won't mean anything to you, but they definitely will. We need to make use of them somehow. So there's a couple of approaches we could take. One, we can enumerate them. We can make an enum for all the key codes, right? Which is not a bad thing. So this is one thing we'll do. We'll say enum, make a new file, right? And we'll call this key code. So, or maybe we'll call them keys.ts, right? So keys dot, and then whatever it's going to be. So we can say that we're going to make a new under enums, so module enums, right? Enumerations basically. Inside there, we're going to have an enum, which is going to be called keys. Keys. And we want to export this, of course. Export an enum that's called keys. And we want to start defining these keys together. So one of them is, and we can, by the way, enums can go in order, but you can also specify the number, which is very, very important. So I can say, let's talk about left arrow first. So we'll say left arrow, right? And you can say that the left arrow is, I believe, I'm just reading a list here, 37. You guys can't see the list, but you can do this. So left arrow is 37. And then you can go right arrow. You can specify all of them, by the way. Left arrow is 39. Okay, so left arrow, right arrow. We can also say that up arrow, this is just the key code that we're going to use. Up arrow is 38. And what we can do is put them in the correct order. So that's 38. And we'll take these numbers away in a sec. I just want to show you what they are. And then the down arrow is 40. Down arrow is equal to 40. So what I could do is just say left arrow is 37 as an example, and these are the arrow keys. So arrow keys, right? 37, 38, 39, 40. And then we can put the other keys we want. We want the WASD keys, right? So again, if I was going to say the W, then W is going to be equal to 87. So I'm just looking at the key code, so I don't have to look them up. And then A on that's going to be equal to 65. And we also have S, and that's going to be equal to 83. And then D, that's going to be equal to 68. So they're kind of all over the place because they're coming off in order, right? So really it's A, then D, then S, and then W, right? These are the keys in order, right? Not that it really matters. You can put them in any order because all I'm doing is I'm assigning values for each of these things, right? That's just like assigning values to variables. That's what I'm doing. You can do that with enums. You can do that in any language, by the way, not just this one. And then, of course, the special case of the space bar. So space bar, right? We can say space is equal to, and then that number is 32. Yeah. All right, so that is all of your keys, and those are a way of doing it, right? Where you can actually have an enumeration for all the keys, and they have different key codes. I could have also done this with a switch case, a regular static class with static values, but this makes more sense to me, where you have an enum like this, where really they're just variables. Okay, so that's this. But now, since we add this in, we also have to add this, and also might as well add the keyboard manager into my index.html. We're not finished the keyboard manager, but we're going to do it. So we're going to say, going into managers, we're going to say script source, and we're going to say /scripts/managers/ keyboard. And under enums, we have an enums area as well. I think I put them somewhere. Managers, where did I put them? Enums up here, components. So script source /scripts/enums/key. So keys is also what I have. So I have keys. I like to put these things in probably some kind of order. These are kind of components that I need to build everything else. So that's why I've put them up here. Component scripts are kind of things that I need to build every other thing. Okay? So there's my keyboard. Keyboard depends on keys. So that's why it comes first. All right, so keys is done. So I don't need to do this anymore. So I can just like say enums.keys. And then whatever this ends up being. Okay? But now let's go back to my keyboard. So case enum.keys enums.keys and again I want to think about what this is going to look like. So we're going to do input for the keyboard, and what I want to do for the keyboard is I want to start with maybe my arrow keys and that kind of thing. So let's go back to the arrow keys, and then see, my kids like to come in and say hi, even though I've told them, like, I just yelled at them and say, guys, stay out of the room, keep it down, but they do it anyway, which is kind of interesting, but it is what it is. Kids are kids, right? So they're gonna do what they're gonna do. All right, so again, what we want to do is we want to start off with the WASD keys. So I think I want to start off with W as well as the up arrow. So we'll say W if it's W, or you can do both these cases. If enums.keys.up arrow, right? So W or up arrow, they're the same, right? We want the same kind of input. You can make them different. We want to break those. So what is it going to do, right? I want to move up. Let me say there was a move up function, and we can set, you know, a bunch of public properties, right, that allow me to change the state, you know, to moving up or moving down or whatever. But really what I want to do is I want to set booleans, right? And again, there's a couple ways that I can do this, right? I can detect whether I'm moving up, down, and so on, and I can have these booleans turn off and on. So let's set these up as public, right? And I want to make them as properties that I'm going to basically, and again, I mean, they're all going to be public anyway. So there's a couple of approaches here. One approach is to make them all public, so you don't have to have private instance variables and so on for data members, because really it's just an on and off state, right? So this is where I'm going to break some of my conventions and just say public, and I'm going to say that there's going to be like kind of a move up, move down, and so on, and that kind of thing. So we're just going to call this move up, which is going to be Boolean, right? And we're going to set that by default to false, right? We're going to say public move down, which is a Boolean, and we're going to set that by default is false. Public move left, public move right. You can also make this a state machine as well. Public, and then I'm not sure if we should call it fire, but we can make it probably fire or jump. It really depends on what you want. Let's call it fire. Okay, so I think those are the basics that I would have. So kind of like you have stuff that's on and stuff that's off, and this is the kind of stuff that we're going to enable for us. Okay, so kind of move up, move down, move left, move right, fire. And fire could also be jump if you're going to make a jumping kind of game. In this case, it's going to be firing because we're going to make our space bar fire, right? All right, so if that makes sense, then when we press the up arrow, we're going to say that move up, this dot move up, is equal to true, right? We're moving up. On the downside, when we, just going to do the other side, event.keycode. So we're going to say when case enums.keys.w or case enums.keys.up arrow, when that's not pressed. So when that's not pressed, this is when the key is up on key up, when I stop pressing the button. Then what I want to say is that my move up is false when I stop pressing the button. So this is just going to basically say, is it true or false? Am I moving up or moving down? That's what it's going to be, just like up or down kind of keys. Okay, does that make sense? So I'm mapping keys. Now this is not using a fancy command pattern. This is literally hard coding the keys so they move up and down. This does not allow you to change the key map. So if you had like a key map function in your code, this does not allow that. This is just hard coding keys, so it goes up and down for now. Okay. And so the same pattern goes for the other ones. So let's do WASD. So A, and A would be left arrow, right? And then that would be move left, right, is true. Okay, so we're just going to move that to the side. And sorry, the formatting is wacky on this stuff when you do this. So copy, and then we'll move this over here and there. And again, it doesn't matter. I just keep on making wacky formatting happen. Oops. right? So when the left arrow, then that's false. You can see that that is just a mirror of this one. It just turns it off. So turn it on, turn it off whenever we're doing something. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so we'll do the same thing here. So WAS, so make it so it's more reasonable. So S, the S key is the down key, right? So we'll say down arrow. So S or the down arrow, and we'll say move down is true. And again, you can see how I'm building this out. Not that it cares how I want it to format. It's going to format itself the way it wants, my friends. And this is false, right? We got two more. Okay, and then we're going to check this out and see if it works, right? So the next one is the D key. So here's the D key. And then D key moves to the right. So down arrow or right arrow. Okay, and we're going to move right, and that's true. Move right is true. Okay, and this is going to move right is false. Okay, there we go. So again, move up, move left arrow, down arrow, up arrow, right arrow. This will do everything that you need to do, up, down, left, and right. Okay, and if you press more than one at the same time, we're gonna have a problem. Why? Because this can only do one move at a time. This is the disadvantage of this type of switch case. If you didn't want to use a switch case and you want to move more than one direction, you'd have to use if and a bunch of if statements. Not if else, just if. Right? Then you can move more than one direction at the same time. Okay? This only allows a single direction to be clicked at the same time. Or up, or these are if, else, if, else, if. That's what this does. Okay, so if you wanted it to be different, if you wanted to make two positions, then you'd have to have this separate. And same thing goes with spacebar. So spacebar, okay, so we're going to make the spacebar work. Okay, so we're going to say this is, instead of having two, there's only one space bar. So we're going to say dot space, right? Then we want to fire. Well, that's true, and this is where you're going to use for the bullet firing technique. Okay. Okay, so when we stop firing, it's going to stop moving. So these are all things we can look at, and this is a basic keyboard manager that I wanted to show you. My internet connection is unstable. A basic keyboard manager I wanted to show you to make sure that we're good to go. All right, so how do we make use of this thing? Because it's one thing to say that, hey, this is our keyboard manager, and another thing to use it, right? So how do I use this thing? Well, I need to instantiate a keyboard every single time I want to use it. Sometimes I'm going to have a keyboard in use, and sometimes I won't. Maybe there won't be a keyboard necessary for me. And the other thing is, my keyboard uses WASD, right? But what about if I want to type something? This wouldn't be the case, right? I wouldn't want to use a keyboard to type with WASD. Or what if I wanted to have different keys enabled on different scenes? Then I would have to do different things here. Okay. Or what if I wanted to disable the keyboard entry, as an example? You know, like for example, when my game is paused, I should be able to disable the keyboard entry, right? And so on. That's important to do too. So for now, it doesn't do any of those things. Okay, it just literally just gets input and modifies some booleans that are public. Okay, the very basic way of doing things. I'm not even using properties here. I'm just literally using some public methods. Okay. Okay, so cool. So I've got this to work. Now what I need to do is instantiate it in my scene. So first we're going to put this up on GitHub because we made some changes. So I'm going to say this is my keyboard manager version 1. So again, I'm going to stage everything. I'm going to say added keyboard manager, or we'll say first draft, maybe spell keyboard properly. First draft of keyboard manager. That's what that is, because we're going to make changes to this thing again. And then we're just going to push this up on GitHub. Okay, so you should have those changes. The keyboard manager should be up on GitHub now, so I pushed. Great. So now that we have the keyboard manager, how do I use it? So again, going back to this, let's just close everything off. So gone. And I want to open up my new scenes. Here's my scenes. And here's the play scene. There's the play scene. And I want to initial and kind of establish a new keyboard manager. So I'm going to say again, private underscore keyboard manager. Keyboard manager is of type managers dot keyboard. All right, so there's my keyboard manager. Right. And what my keyboard manager is going to do is I need to instantiate it just like before. I'm going to go down here and say this dot underscore keyboard manager is equal to a new manager dot keyboard. Okay, it's my keyboard manager. And what I want to do is, now that I've established my keyboard manager, it's in play. I have access to my keyboard manager. But guess what? It's only available inside this class, right? And so I want to do the same thing I did before with my config.game. My keyboard manager should be something that I can access from anywhere, including the plane, right? So again, I'm going to go in here and go to definition. And I want to make another manager. It's going to be the keyboard manager. Let's add that in. These are all statics. We can also do this differently somewhere else, and we'll try and do this later on in a different way. So keyboard manager. All right, and then managers.keyboard. So we're going to save that. And just like we've done before, we're just going to go in here and say config.game.keyboard manager is equal to this.keyboard manager. All right, so we're just going to make a reference. These are all references, but in the future, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to replace this with singletons. We haven't gone there yet. One thing at a time. Remember, my motto to you is, first, make it work. Then, optimize. Don't optimize as you go because you're never going to finish, right? We have a lot of work to do and never enough time to do it. And optimizing as we go, although it might seem the right thing to do, like do it right the first time, it's never right the first time. The best way to do it is go code, get your code out there, get people looking at it, modify it, fix it, then you got something running, and then go that way. I think that's just faster when it comes to game making. Nothing wrong with planning though. I think planning is a really good step. It'll make your code less buggy, but don't try and be perfect every single time. It's just not possible, especially when it comes to learning how things work with a framework. Okay, so that's great. So we've added the keyboard manager in here, and then what I got to do is, so once I've instantiated it, right, I've got it in my scene, I want my plane to use it. So my plane is the thing that's going to use it. So I've added my bullet manager in, and that gets added in here, and it gets instantiated, added my bullets to my scene, right? But my plane is the thing that's really using it. Okay, so let's go back to my plane. Okay, so here's my plane.ts. And before, what we did was this. We said, okay, on my ticker every 10 frames, right, then I want to fire my bullets, right, and constantly. However, what I want to do now is I want to check if the bullet is being fired every 10 frames. You can check faster too if you want, but for now, only every 10 frames I'm checking to see if my keyboard is being pressed. So I can say that if this is true, if 10 frames have passed, start checking now. So I can say, hey, if my keyboard, so config.game.keyboard manager, if my fire is true, and only if my fire is true, then, I don't know how that happened, then fire bullets. That's the only change we're making. Does this make sense? So what's happening is that, so I'm checking every frame. Now this is dangerous because think about this. I'm only waiting for 10 frames before I can fire. If I can press, I can keep that space bar pressed as long as I want, but only every 10 frames is it going to fire. And if I press it and then press it again, and if it's not within 10 frames, it won't fire. So it's kind of a weird way to do things, but this is one way. Let's try it out and see if this works. So keyboard manager keeps track of my presses. and we're just asking the keyboard manager to see if it's working. All right, so let's see if that works. So I'm going to save this. We'll go back to our code, which is here, right? And refresh the screen. Let's start playing and see if that works. If I fire my bullets, and oh man, look, my keyboard is like firing forever now, right? And once it started firing, it's like a hose, right? So that's interesting. It started to fire. So when I pressed the space bar, it started to fire bullets. When the keyboard manager fire started to fire bullets. And when firing bullets happened, right, firing bullets kept happening, right? All right, so what did we do wrong? Let's take a look at that keyboard manager again. The keyboard manager worked, but it works forever, which is weird, right? So there's my keyboard manager, right? And let's see what we did wrong. Okay, so keyboard, da-da-da-da-da. And we said if it's true, and yeah, it's always true. Look, even here. So this is what we did wrong. We forgot to put. That's why I said keyboard manager, you know, first draft. This is my second draft because I made a mistake. Okay. So that's the keyboard manager, and now that should work a little better. But it looks like it's working. So again, if I start, I can press fire, and I can press a couple bullets at a time. And you can see that the bullets are going to come out, and it's not going to be terrible, right? But if I keep firing the bullets, it's only going to fire every 10 frames, right? So I can continue to fire my bullets through my scene, okay? Well, I didn't even get hit once there. I don't know. I'm getting to be an expert at this game. Or maybe I play this game too much. What do you think? Huh. Nice? All right, this is cool. And I've been moving my plane. I've been moving my plane with my mouse this whole time, but the reality is that you know, mouse is interesting, you know, mouse movement. But what I want to do instead is I want to move with my keys. What if I wanted to move with my arrow keys? I want to use my WASD keys to move my plane and not my mouse. How would I do that? Well, we have hints on how to do this now, right? So before, what we do is we say, I want to move up, I want to move left, I want to move down, right? And the way my plane moves, if I go to my plane, right, it says, okay, here's my position, and I'm going to take the position that I want, where my current position is, and where my plane, my mouse is going to be, and I'm going to lerp between those two positions at some amount. And that's what's giving me that smooth motion to the right or left. Okay, that's what's happening there. Well, okay. But what I want to do is when I press the right button, which is the D key or the arrow key right, I want to be able to move my plane around, as an example, by just moving the button. So press the right button and then move my plane to the right. How much do I move my plane to the right? Well, it really depends on my acceleration, right? So right now my plane only has my vertical position, my engine sound, and my bullet spawn. What I'd have to do here is add in a you know, a horizontal speed, right, that I want to move my plane at. Okay, so let's add that in. Let's try it out. So private horizontal speed, right? We're going to make it a number, and we're going to try this out. Okay, and my horizontal speed is going to be something that we're going to establish in start. So here's in start. We have my vertical position, my engine sound, my volume, all that stuff, and we're going to set up the horizontal speed. So this dash under horizontal speed, I'm going to set that up to, let's say, 10. I don't know. I'm giving it a value. Okay, 10. And that's really what my horizontal speed is. If you think about it, it's my velocity. I want a velocity, right? I want to add, I don't want to just change the position. That's not good. I want to lerp between one position and another, right? So that's what I want to do, right? So where I'm gonna be and where I'm at, I want to lerp between those two positions, okay? If that makes any sense. But before I get there, we've got a lot of changes. We added the keyboard manager. Let's add keyboard manager version 2. Just want to say that added or updated keyboard manager. Second draft. Okay. And I'm going to add these to the staging area, and I'm going to push these up to GitHub so you have all those changes. So now it actually fires when I want it to fire. It doesn't fire continuously in stream like some kind of hose. Okay. Horizontal speed. So this is where we want to add. This is the last thing we'll do for today. Okay. So I want to add the horizontal speed to my position. So this is the way we do it with the mouse. I'm just going to comment this out. So we're going to say that, you know what? Imagine if we don't have mouse. We just have keyboard now. So everything is keyboard. So I'll use the arrow keys and the space bar, or the WASD keys and the space bar to shoot, right? So how does this work? So I want to get the new X position. So let's new position X. I want to still do this. That's going to be equal to whatever the current position is, right? And whatever my horizontal position is going to be, right? But this is only going to happen, I'm only going to move to the right if and only if, right, I'm going to get a keyboard press, right? Does that make sense? So I get a keyboard press, I move to the right, move to the left. So I need some kind of switch case or whatever it's going to be if I want to move. Otherwise, the position is just going to be the same position all the time. I'm not even going to change this position, right? So I'll say, okay, if I have a keyboard press left or right, so if my keyboard, so config.game.keyboardmanager.move left, right? So some kind of movement left, then I want to, or either one or the other. And again, let's just think about this. config.game.keyboardmanager.move right? Something's moved me left or right. I don't know what it is, right? If this is true, if I'm moving left or right, this is the only time that I want to do this part. I don't want to change my position if I'm not moving left or right. That's what this is saying, okay? Bullet spawn is always going to be the same. Bullet spawn is always going to move. Wherever my ship is, so too, or my plane, so too is the bullet spawn. That's going to be the case all the time. But this, that's going to be different. So if I'm moving to the right, then my new position, and I'm going to just say that, let's say my new position is going to be whatever it's going to be, right? And it depends on what I'm doing. So if the case that I'm moving to the right, so config.game, I don't know which one I'm moving though, .keyboard .move right, if that's true, and I can't move right and left at the same time, so that's going to be an else. It's either one or the other, right? And I could use a ternary operator if it was very small, but let's see what I have to do here. If I'm moving to the right, then my position, new position x, is equal to the current position x, right? Dot x plus some value, which is going to be this dot horizontal speed, right? So I'm adding 10 to the position. That's the new position x. All right. But what I don't want to do is I just want to move. My new position x is going to be where I want to be, right? That's where I want to be every frame, not where I am yet. Okay, so if I was just to add this in, no problem, right? If we were to do that, you're going to see very static. So watch, I'll show you what the difference is. So then I'll copy this in there, and then we'll do this, right? And then new position.x is negative horizontal speed. So whatever the position x is, and subtract horizontal speed or negative. And if I'm going to do this, then I can rewrite this into one line. I could say something like let new position.x is equal to, hey, what is the keyboard configuration? config.game.keyboardmanager.move right. If it's move right, as an example, then new position is equal to this, right? New position is equal to this, right? Else, and I'll put this on different lines here so you can see it. Else, it's actually the same line. Else, this. Okay, and you can do that, and it's like considered one line, and you can just get rid of all this. Right? Because what this is, remember how this works? It's a ternary operator. This is actually one line of code, right? The way it works is, hey, I want my new position to be something. It can be either, you know, I'm either adding to it. So if I'm moving right, then add to the current X position my new horizontal speed, or this is the or, take my position and subtract horizontal speed. And then my new position is equal to whatever the x-axis is, and then the vertical position, the current vertical position. Okay, so that's kind of a way you can do it, but you're going to see this is a little bit finicky and when this works. Okay, so let's try this out and see if this works. A different way of doing movement. And I think you guys are okay, so let's continue. So start, and oh man, what the heck happened up here? Well, we're okay here. You can see that this works all right. Right? This is me using my keyboard, by the way. It stops on a dime though, right? It's like it doesn't float anymore, right? So that's the difference. But whoa, what happened up here? Let's redo that change again. So bam, and then we start, and my plane is all the way up there suddenly, right? Well, why is that? Because before, what was happening is my plane was at a certain spot, right? So when I move, right, my position is equal to the vertical position. Well, what is vertical position? This dot vertical position. So go to definition here. Where did I get vertical position? So there's vertical position, yeah? So where do I set vertical position? Do I set it anywhere, right? And I got bullet spawn, and I got start, and then my vertical position is 430. All right, so what is happening? How come in my move, I've got my vertical position here, and well, my position is happening here? Well, because I never set my position for the first time. So the position, I never get this. So I need to set it for the first time somewhere. Even though vertical position is here, I've never done that because I only do it here if I press a button, right? So I need to do that for the first time in my start, which is a little different than what I did before. Okay, so start. Let's do that. So I'll say this dot underscore position, or actually this dot position, right? And we're going to say that it's a new vector to object, because before we're getting the information for the mouse, right? Objects dot vector 2, and we're going to get it from the x and y coordinates. The x coordinate is going to be in the center of the screen just for the beginning. So config dot game dot screen width, right, dot 0.5, and then my vertical position will be 430 pixels. So this dot underscore vertical position, because that's going to be where the bottom of the screen is for now, right? So by default, my plane will start in the middle of the screen and then at the lower half, 430 pixels. That will fix my problem. Okay, let's see if that works. So start, you can see that that's where it starts, and I can see my plane is moving very fast at 10 pixels per frame, right? And it's very chunky. It doesn't move smooth, right? It just changes it teleports from one spot to the next. That's what it does. So it still moves. The keyboard is working, and I can still fire bullets, and I can do both, right? I can kind of fire and what seems like firing bullets and everything at the same time, even though, you know, it's a you know, kind of a space bar thing. And I can do the arrow keys too, so I can kind of move the arrow keys and press the space bar where I'm moving my buttons, right, all at the same time, and I'm pretty good, right? Look at that. But it'd be nice if we float a little bit, because the plane likes to float. It doesn't like to just move, like change position. This actually changed the position, but I'd love to use something that looks like this. And if you notice, the lerp, math.lerp takes 2 floats, and then it changes where it's going to be at. So it's almost like I need a current position and I need a new position, and that new position is going to be what I'm calculating. That new position is what I want to calculate, right? And that new position is going to be this funky thing here, right? So I want to get the new position that I'm going to calculate, right? Whatever that's going to be, right? And I'm going to take this position. So this little thing here is not wrong to put back. So I can kind of take this back, but there's no mouse X and mouse Y. It's going to be the new position that I'm going to put in here. So let's try this out. So I'm going to grab this whole thing. And I'm going to go back into the, before I reposition it, I'm going to take this new position again. So this is where we're going to get a little funky. So first I make the new position, and then I want to lerp to it from wherever I currently am to the new position, right? So I'm going to say that this dot, new position.x, new position.x, right? So I'm lerping, and remember what lerping does? It takes a value between those two things, and every frame, I'm going to get there, as long as I'm pushing the button. Okay. First of all, will this work? Let's see if that messes me up completely, right? So space, and now you can see that I'm moving, but really slow, right? Really slow. It's like it's gonna get there, but I'm moving like super slowly, right? So it kind of works really slow. Like what I want, instead of this number being 0.05 in this case, I want it to be 0.99. That's what I really want. Okay, let's try that again. So, boom, and now you can see that it's maybe too much, right? So let's move this to 0.90. All right, so again, we can start. And there's a bit of lag now, right? Right, not enough. We can move that down even further. So let's say we can move it to 0.7, right? Okay, now the more I reduce that number, the more restricted my value is going to be. Okay? So that will do some limitation for me. So again, whatever the current value of x is, and then whatever the new value of x is, but that's only going to be the case if I'm pressing the right mouse button or the left mouse button. It's going to check one of those two, either one or the other, and then depending on which one is pressed, it's going to calculate my new value again. And this is where we fall down, because every single time it calculates the new value, and then this is going to be obsolete. Doesn't matter. It actually ignores it. So one way we could do it is we could calculate velocity instead, and have a velocity vector where I add the two velocities together, right? But again, that's a topic of another day. So for now, what we're going to have is just going to get rid of this because it doesn't really do anything. We're going to keep this little thing here just to remind us, and I'm going to put a to-do in here, and the to-do's will light up. So I want to improve movement. So to-do, right? You see that the to-do lights up. Make movement smoother, right? That's what I want to do, and with some kind of velocity, with a velocity function, because that makes more sense than just like. What this is really doing is teleporting from one position to the other. It's still okay, and it looks okay. It looks pretty smooth, but it's not really right. Okay, I want to kind of move left and smoothly move to the left and smoothly move to the right, and we're going to do this on another day because it's already 4:20. All right, so again, let's think about all the things we've done today, and I'm going to put this up on GitHub for you. So, did I not check mark this? Yes, okay. So now we're going to stage this one. So we're going to say changed plane movement to keyboard. All right. This is my plane movement to keyboard, keyboard control. All right. And we've staged all that, and we're going to push this up to GitHub as well. So now we have keyboard controls for our plane because we have a keyboard manager. Awesome. All right. So to recap. Lots of changes today. We added in keyboard movement with our mouse. We've added space firing bullets or control of bullets with our space bar. We've added bullets from the last video, how to make bullets in a bullet pool. That all looks awesome. And the next part is next week. What I want to do is I want to add an enemy, give it some intelligence, right, and make it fire back at the player, get hit by the player's bullets, fire back bullets at the player. Those are the things that I want to do next week if we can as we move forward. Okay, so a couple things that are left over. Again, just to reiterate, tonight sorry, tomorrow night is your beta release. Again, for your beta release, you need 3 main scenes. They should be different. There should be a different goal for each scene. Okay. You have different enemies perhaps, or maybe different pickups, different reasons for being. You have a start scene and an end scene. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to do some more tweaking over the next week or so. That's what's going to happen, right? And as we move towards our final release, and then we're going to get some feedback from everybody on how things are going with the releases. What I'm hoping for next week is maybe if we have some time next week, and maybe I won't be so aggressive with the stuff that I'm showing you. Maybe you can show me your stuff, okay? So that way we can get some feedback for your final release, okay? Otherwise, that's it for me. I'm wishing you a happy weekend. Hopefully you guys get everything in on time for tomorrow night. Please let me know if I can help. Shoot me an email or hit me up on Discord if you have any kind of challenges or issues, and I'll see if I can come on and help you out over the weekend. Otherwise, guys, take care, and I will see you next week. Okay, so I'm going to just stop recording here, and I'm going to stop recording here, and then I'll come back on to chat if you need anything at all. So I'll end the stream